Thank you all for coming. Good to see a lot of faces I really have come to know over the years. This talk is called Huntington's Disguise, but I got some challenges going here that are not unlike the challenges facing Huntington's disease. Like I'm going to have trouble doing three things at once. Holding this close enough for you to hear this, because we're streaming it. I could certainly shout loud enough so you could all hear me, but for media reasons on streaming, we got to keep it like this. So this is one thing, and then doing this clicker to advance the thing, and then stay on track. So it might get a little bit awkward and crazy, but Brother Matt, the media master back there, is going to coach me through this. So anyway, this you often see either in home goods or Bed Bath & Beyond as plaques, right, to wall decorations. It is comedy and tragedy. The masks that really began in... You thought I was kidding. Whoops. Which began in ancient Greek theater. So they were the masks that the actors would use so people could see wicked far away, as we say where I'm from, at great distances. And they used them just to change their roles quickly and that kind of stuff. But over the subsequent centuries, they've come in this comedy tragedy thing to represent the range of all human emotion. Happy, sad, glad, mad, that kind of thing. So it's kind of a symbol for theater, all kinds of theater. Huntington's disease, though, creates this problem. It adds a third mask. This one here on the left. This kind of face. Not sad, but just neutral. Like that. You all know it as family because you see pictures of family reunions and events, and you'll say, there it is, I can see that's where Uncle Joe was just starting to get affected, that kind of stuff. When you see that in those pictures, that's Huntington's disguise. So this talk is about, oh, by the way, there's Woody Guthrie's Huntington's disguise. Now, I show this picture because you can see Woody in the position of his arm and his posture, and you just kind of know in his face. I picked this picture because no matter what you think of Woody, based on that visual image of him, 6 weeks after this picture was taken, he wrote 126-page yellow legal sheets, long sheets, filled every line on them, a script to a play. So no matter what you might guess of Woody's abilities, capabilities, mood, and all that kind of stuff, he generated a 126-page play, theatrical script, 6 weeks later. So the issue is that Huntington's disguise happens when HD's cognitive characteristics. Now, hopefully that's going to be the last time I use the word cognitive, and we're going to replace it with plain English and call it thinking. So you often hear, as you have heard at this conference, a lot of docs conceptualize Huntington's disease as a trio or a triad or three groups of clinical symptoms: movement disorder, mood disorder, and cognitive thinking disorder. Excuse me. So what Huntington's disguise is, some of the features from the first one, movement, join some of the features from the cognitive thing and get shaken up and combined and integrated with one another, and it creates this image known as Huntington's disguise. There it is. The issue is that as close as you people are, family, to those of your family members who are walking their own HD roads, as well as you know them, as intimately as you know them, sometimes these features, this disguise, can even fool you. It's shocking that you could be so close to somebody and that somehow you could still have difficulty reading it. And that's with great respect for how well you know your loved one. And sometimes these things, some from column A, some from column C, combine so that you might be misled into believing what they are thinking, feeling, or have on their mind. So that's what Huntington's disguise is. Hopefully, though, we will reveal how the disguise is put together, and then you'll be able to see through it and prevent those false beliefs, okay? Now, this is somewhat important for self-evident reasons, but there's other ones too. And no matter what the disability among us humans, no matter what the condition that disables people, you will hear people complain or feel blue about the number of friends who fall aside as people's disability progresses. It's a common thing, no matter what. Neurologic condition, physical disabilities, all of those things, that's just a phenomenon, a human phenomenon that people talk about all the time. So also another reason for, you know the old expression, first impressions are lasting? I would say that if first impressions are lasting, first misimpressions are probably wicked longer lasting. So if you immediately begin to think that somebody doesn't like you, or are disinterested in you, or maybe even angry at you, it's going to take you a while to build a warmer relationship if you start out on that, under those misperceptions. And in nursing homes, excuse me, the number of caregivers for any one nursing home resident in a week can actually be pretty high. So remember, the minimum number of folks, that is the people who deliver most of the care, certified nursing assistants, CNAs, the minimum number you can have in a week is 6. 6 different people, because there are 3 shifts, and then not everybody works 7 days. So let's say that somebody else has to come in for weekends, or that kind of stuff. So over 3 shifts, so there's 6. Then you start adding things like, we got to give the employees vacations, and employees are human. They get sick and call in. They have all the challenges that we all have of things that get in the way of work. And then one unit might be understaffed, so they tend to balance it and float people from one unit to the next. And before you know it, the number of different people who take care of people can reach 14, 15 people a week. So this is not to cast any negative aspersions on those people who work those jobs. But it is another liability because they too are human, and they don't have enough time to quickly learn to see through the disguise and understand that people may like them, but they may encounter Uncle Joe in that nursing home on any given night, and the first face they see is, even though Joe may be bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and extremely excited to have some new kid taking care of him. So it's a challenge in nursing homes with the high number of carers that people encounter to see through the disguise. So all of those reasons, I think, are important of like why we got to teach people explicitly how to see through the disguise. Okay, so again, the disguise is a bunch of features from the movement disorder and physical pieces, plus a bunch of features that come from the challenges in thinking. We mix them together, and that's the disguise. So what we're going to do is briefly go over each feature that contributes to Huntington's disguise. So we will start with the movement stuff. The first one is this notion, and there are many things I want to be clinically accurate here. There are many, many contributors to this. Sometimes people use the word, especially in psychiatry, bland affect, just this neutral thing. There are many reasons that contribute to this clinically, but one of them is just this generalized weakness in your facial muscles that contribute to this. Again, neutral, just neutral. This is a metaphor. This is not clinically accurate, but a metaphor. It's almost like you can rest your face and work at it a bit, get totally relaxed to the point where you can just kind of feel like all your muscle and tissue and everything is hanging off your skull. Just like that. So that weakness and other things basically contribute to that appearance. Like this. The second thing is this notion of motor impersistence. Anybody familiar with this notion of motor impersistence? No? Excellent. So, motor impersistence is essentially this. As I'm talking to you, doing two or three things at a time, I don't have to consciously tell my hand, Jim, make sure that you keep those contractions in your fingers and your palm fixed while you're talking. Keep them maintained on that phone that you're waving around. So those contractions are, they, as I'm talking to you, persist. If they didn't persist, right, they would impersist. So an oversimplification, admittedly, but enough for the purpose of this talk. Motor impersistence is the inability, really, to maintain those contractions or those postures. Now, what does this have to do with the disguise? Let me first, before I answer that, tell you where you might have first seen, as family, a manifestation of motor impersistence. Now, because of the streaming, I got to do this over here. But if you guys can't see me over there, just let me know, and I will do it again. So back when, if you had a mom or a dad who was still working, affected, still driving, and you're a kid, and you're a kid who in the age range where, at least from the Boston area, the snow was always deeper and the summer was always longer, kind of thing, where everything was more vivid as a child. Mom and dad might have been driving down a road, the interstate, and had their ankle on the gas pedal, maintaining a nice, steady speed, 60, 65 up the interstate. But then, slowly, if you have motor impersistence on that contraction in the ankle, your ankle kind of slowly backs off, and the car goes down to 55 or 50, until the driver realizes, oh, okay, and they put their foot back down on the pedal and bring it back up to the speed limit. And then it happens again. Back down a little bit, bring it up to speed. If you're the child in the back, you may remember it as being, yeah, when I was a kid and mom was driving, it felt like, whoa, whoa, that kind of thing. Now, I don't know if anybody's seen that, but a lot of folks will recall that kind of thing. So it's hard to, like, retrospectively diagnose that condition, but it's pretty clear that a lot of times that is attributable to motor impersistence. So that's one place you see it. Other places you see motor impersistence are much more evident when people can't maintain their grasp and they drop cups or utensils as they're trying to place food in their mouths, that kind of thing. It's all kind of related to motor impersistence. But in terms of the disguise, motor impersistence comes in where once I single somebody out to speak to them. So if I pick on Sarah right here, and I can't move to get close to her, but there she is, and you're doing it, man. She is not just it's more than direct eye contact. Around her eyes and her upper face are these like micro contractions that somehow signal to me, and we all do it to everybody else, okay, we're a little bit more than passing here. We are going to get engaged in a conversation. There they are. You've never thought about this probably ever before. They're micro contractions that, again, signal to us, okay, we're in the middle of a conversation kind of thing. Again, in addition to just good, crisp eye contact. So if you encounter somebody with HD, you might get this, hey, Charlie, it's great to see you, and they begin chatting with you, and they communicate through these micro contractions. Okay, now we're having a conversation, we're engaged, but motor impersistence, they will go away again. And it doesn't look like they're really, really paying attention or are engaged with you. So element number one is just this kind of flat, bland affect. And then if you start interacting with somebody, even if you can signal that and have those contractions when you see somebody, they don't last. They go back to this. So that motor impersistence up here in the face and just that flatness are two of the contributors on the physical end. Now, it's very important to note that none of the things I'm going to cover here on the physical stuff is dramatic. They're all subtle. But it's an accumulation of very subtle features that all contribute to this disguise. So, motor persistence around the eyes. And then the same is true about smiling. So think of those pictures where you got the family group together and you say, okay, everybody say cheese or smile or whatever, wait for the orange light or whatever it was. Maybe Uncle Charlie went like everybody else, but if he's got that, can't hold it, by the time click, it's gone, and there's your picture 15 years later, and there's no smile there. Maybe that wasn't the case, admittedly, but pay attention to this. Next time you take a group photo, and you'll see what I'm talking about. And we add to that one more feature, which is this, I don't know, doctors say it a little different than people who had 4 years of high school Greek, but saccade. But that's the basic thing of where your eyes following, you know when they do the neurologist does the follow my finger, hold your head, and it's like this jerky thing as you follow it. So if you're having a conversation with somebody and you're moving or they're moving, even if it's just their head, that notion, that ocular problem, you may not even be aware of it, but it just doesn't look like somebody's really making good eye contact and conversation. So it's another subtle one added to the list. And there are other tracking things with your head and eyes that come in, but I'm not going to go into detail because they're hard to demonstrate for you, for me anyway. Another one is, and now we're getting to one of the bigger ones, is the notion of a change in posture from dystonia. Anybody familiar with dystonia? Dystonia is, and again, I admit, I'm oversimplifying this, but still trying to maintain clinical integrity. But dystonia is a disorder, essentially, of muscle tone, or a disorder of tone, or a dis of tone, or dystonia. Most often, it manifests itself in folks with HD in some kind of postural change. So it could be leaning this way, it could be leaning this way, it could be coming up on your toes, which is really a problem because adults who are up on their toes and walking, it always looks like they're going to crash into things. And you're going, ah! Usually, by the way, on the side, they develop a compensatory balance and don't actually smash into the wall. But it will scare anybody who loves them. So it could be up on your toes. It could be leaning back on your heels. Now, I have an appendage here, if you haven't noticed, that makes it extremely difficult for me to demonstrate leaning back on your heels. Or it could be a twisted trunk. It could be any one of those things. There's no typical one, and they may change. But if you encounter me, and what you get is this. Whatever you encounter me, you've never met me before, and you figure out what it's going to be like to interact with me just based on this, I can change what you're thinking about what I'm going to be like simply by changing my posture. Just a little bit, man, just like this much. So you might encounter me like this, or you might encounter me like this. Now, I know, at least where I'm from, that when I see this, that is attitude, right? That communicates something, man, when you're like this. And it usually is not in the domain of, gee, I'm really interested and excited to see you. It's more like that kind of thing. So posture is a real big one because it signals stuff. In fact, let me just go to the next thing. This is particularly true. Oh, one more little thing. Oh, this is a real tiny one. And it's only in here to make the point that the features are all subtle, but taken together, they really have an impact. A lot of times as people progress, and this is true a lot with the world's most prevalent, progressively degenerative disease, neurologic disease, which is, it's a trick question, aging. Okay? So a lot of times, what? A lot of times people's shoulders just come in a little tiny bit. Not pronounced like this, but just like a little bit. And when your shoulders come in a bit, it's just natural that your head just drops a tiny little bit. Just a tiny thing. But enough so that if you look at somebody and make eye contact, I would do something like lift my glasses. Just really subtle. So the head's down a little. And again, I was mentioning before, the first communication kind of prerequisite is good, crisp eye contact, which you don't have even if your head is down just a tiny bit. So there's the shoulders thing. But back to dystonia. Dystonia also happens as people are in seated positions. So a lot of times, if you are seated, and your brain is firing away, you kind of start either leaning to one side, or it's hard to do in these cloth, they're rubber, but anyway, these kind of chairs. But you also start pushing out and slouching out like this because of your position due to the dystonia. Now, if I looked out on any of you guys, all I would need is one or two of you to be in this position as I'm talking to you, which I'm grateful that you're all upright now, by the way. I would get the message. I would start thinking, okay, let's pick up the pace, get the hell out of here, man. I'm boring them, just based on, this kind of thing. So slouching is a biggie. A lot of times people don't understand slouching. A lot of people who are old enough and are of my vintage will remember when cars all had couch seats in the front, right? Usually with vinyl coverings. And then bucket seats came. Now, it was like big stuff. Now all cars essentially are bucket seats. Their own individual front seat and everything with the console in the middle. But in the old days, people always will remember that their loved one might have been, as they're driving, leaning like this on the vinyl seat, and let's say, sit up for God's sakes, man. Or it could have been in their home too, So slouching is another kind of big one. But again, I'm putting it in the context of the disguise because I don't look as interested in you like this as I do like this. Okay, and then there's this whole notion of flopping into or out of chairs. So let's go off a bit here on a tangent and go away from the movement thing to balance. So as people's balance begins to get compromised, it first pretty much appears in one's inability to balance on one foot like this. So where in day-to-day function activity do we balance ourselves on one foot? Answer. You've seen me do it a couple of times now already. Because I have, right here, freeze, right? Remember that movie Zots, and it would freeze? Right here. That, right now, that fleeting millisecond, if you will, as I turn to sit down in the chair, I'm balanced on one foot. Right? That's why you see most falls, excuse me, occur getting in and out of bed, getting on or off the toilet, getting in and out of chairs. So here's my turn, balance on one foot. Hold that thought. Let's switch to a perceptual thing. Depth perception. So as I look at this chair, and you've seen me get up and down out of it a couple of times, never once did I have to consciously think, Jimmy, be sure you make your turn the right distance from that chair. Because if you go too close and make your turn, you'll push the chair. If you go too far from the chair, you won't make the chair, right? And it's a matter of physics. In my case, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. Trust me, it's true. So let's take, again, that impaired balance on one foot and that misjudging the distance from the thing, depth perception, and you might put the two together and see people do things like this. Like that, flopping into chairs. Anybody ever see that? So, it is common, and that's one of the biggest contributors of it, is a little bit too far out, and then the difficulty with balance, where you just kind of flop in. So if I haven't seen you, and we're at the gas station, and I say, Charlie, let's have a cup of coffee, sit down. And Charlie, on the inside, is as excited as I am to see him for the first time in 30 years. Only he says, okay, the message is getting clear to me. Maybe I don't want to sit down with Charlie. He doesn't give two sweet ones about me, you know? That kind of stuff. But flopping into chairs is one. But another one is that people have difficulty finding the right amount of force in movement. So, you have seen me now, again, get up and down out of these chairs several times. Never once did I have to consciously tell myself, Jimmy, be sure you use enough force in your thighs and your calves, your ankles, your trunk, whatever is involved. Make sure you use enough force when you stand up, because if not, you're not going to lift your fat behind against gravity. If I use too much force as I do it, it has the impression of leaping out of a chair, which can be intimidating. And I don't know if you've seen that, but I bet some of you have, because it's pretty dependent on the way the chair is designed. But if you've got in your home, as most chairs in the living room do, they've got like a skirt or something in front of it, a decorative thing. So you really can't get your ankles behind your knees to stand up like this. So they're out here like this. And again, people of a certain vintage and weight like me, you'll see us kind of do this rock before you get out kind of thing. But if you do that and you can't find the right amount of force, if you don't have enough force, you're going to be rocking a long time. But if you have too much force, that is going to be whack, and you have the really leaping out of the chair phenomenon, excuse me, which can be really intimidating. You think people are angry. If you're not familiar with them, you think they're coming at you, and they are. It's just a physical thing with no ill will. So finding the right amount of force is the issue. That middle range. Not too much, not too little. It's called modulating the amount of force, that middle ground. A lot of times, there's another one that we like to mention of modulating force. Could I borrow you? Yeah, come on up for 1 second. No. Let me borrow Matt. I don't want to mess with your woman here. Come over here. So, now we know, we've met before. Come over here, face that thing, because we're getting streamed. We've met before, a couple of times, socially. What I'm suggesting is we've never taken a shower together before. No. So, let's just pretend that you are a cooperative nursing home resident. Let me recite the most important word in that phrase. Cooperative nursing home resident. Cooperative. Okay, and I'm the CNA. And I say, okay, Matt, let's take a shower. I'm going to help you take a shower, man. I'm going to lather up under your arm. Look at this. What a central nervous system you. Look at just the right. Oh, you don't even think about it, man. It was instinctive. He came up helping me, right? You helping me help you, man. It is beautiful. If he didn't have enough force, like me in the chair, he couldn't lift his arm up against gravity, right? But if he has too much force, then it's going to be, and I'm going to say, if you're taking care of Matt tonight, bring somebody with you, because he just clubbed me, man. That kind of thing. Thank you. Now, I am not suggesting that everybody who got clubbed in a nursing home or other congregate care setting ever, that was the reason, because it's not. But what I am saying, and I'm pausing for theatrical effect, is always more to movement in Huntington's disease than meets the eye. As familiar as you are with that person you love, there's too many contributors to what's going on movement-wise. So some of that. And if you start looking for these things like that, you will see that some people are not pushing you away. They're trying to help you, only they can't modulate the force of their movement. Or they, on the not enough force thing, it could look like they're not helping you, man. But that may not be the case of their intent. How could have I lost the damn thing? Did you take it, May? No. Oh, here it is. So you with me now on this stuff? Okay. Again, there's not one thing on that list that stands out as the singular most thing. Again, and I know I'm repeating myself because it's a major theme, it is the accumulation of all these subtle kind of things. Okay, so that's pretty much the movement and physical features. So now let's add some of the challenges in thinking. And we're only going to add a couple of them because you don't need to, man, to make the point. Let's go through them and start with this notion of slower thinking. Now, it says slower there, not slow thinking, slower thinking. And slower thinking just means as all those neurons stop firing or even more of them become compromised, processing information of all kinds just slows down. Really slowly, imperceptibly slowly. It's like aging, right? It's like aging. You don't get up on Wednesday morning and say, God, I just can't do what I did yesterday. No, it's like every couple of months maybe you say, oh, God, I'm getting old. Because you realize it in intervals. So I just point that out because that's how this happens. It's so imperceptibly slow. But changing to the slower end, that everything slows down a bit. And most often, slower processing information manifests itself to us in interactions, in conversations, back and forth. I always think of conversations having a kind of a rhythm to them. I think of cartoons, and if the cartoon, like Warner Brothers, cartoons, if there was a shot in the cartoon of a ping pong match or a tennis game, they would always have a picture of people in the audience, and their head would be going, bum, 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 bum. And I use that in my head to demonstrate that in conversations, there's a back and forth rhythm. If it's in the gas station, when you're buying gas and snacks or whatever you're buying in the gas station, with the clerk, it's like bye. If it's at home at the end of the day, when you're meeting your family, your spouse, your kids, whatever, maybe the nature of the conversation is more substantive, so the responses might be longer. Like longer. But still there's a rhythm back and forth. If one person has slower processing of information, you never get this nice back and forth. You get and if you're the person who doesn't have slower thinking, the unaffected person, waiting for that response has that same kind of feel of downshifting, if you will. It's hard to wait. We'll talk about that in a second. If you are the person, though, who is affected, as soon as you get it out and say your thing, this person, it goes back to them, and they're like, boom. So no matter so as you say stuff, every time you respond, boom, there's another one coming at you. It's like one of those tennis practice things where balls are coming, or a batting cage, where as soon as you take a swing, first, like if you're like me, the first one always whizzes by my eyes. And then I will get my distance from the plate and whatever. But while I'm figuring that out, damn, there's another one whipping by me. Right? And it takes 2 or 3 just to get back in my timing. It's that overwhelming on your heels kind of feeling. That's what it feels like if you're the person with slower processing. No matter how well you respond, your loved one or the other person's come back at you. So on both sides of the equation, it's tough. It's tough because the affected person is getting, you the unaffected person, you're getting this kind of, come on, man, downshifting thing, and they're getting the, whoa, kind of one thing after another. It's very difficult. So that's the issue of slower thinking. And it creates delays in responding. So that's the notion. And if you've ever heard me give talk before, I probably talked about this. This whole notion of setting one's ticker back. And what that is this story. I was working in a nursing home once. We were snowed in, and the nursing home, Janelle, and it was a quiet night. 11 to 7 couldn't get in. 3 to 11 had to stay. The 9 to 5ers had fled. All of that kind of stuff. It was just a nice, quiet, different night. And I was reminiscing with this guy, Tony, about his daughter and his family. And I would say to him, so Tony, what's your daughter's name? Andrea. How old is she? 18. Is that high school, college? Do I know her? How many kids do you have? How many boys? How many girls? Would I know her if she came? Did she visit? When was the last time she was here? Oh, is she the one with the ribbons in her hair, that big picture you have on your bureau? That kind of stuff. So the content of it, him reminiscing about his daughter, there was a warmth to it, that on a typical night, everybody in the home would have been too busy and we wouldn't have probably had that. So I'm reminiscing, basically, with Tony, or Tony's reminiscing about his life, his daughter with me, and even though it was warm, I could tell that I was also annoying him at the same time. Like that old thing of where 2 people begin to speak at precisely the same moment, right? You step on somebody's words, which is not a big thing, right? You just say, no, go ahead, you go first, go. So I kept doing that. And at one point I was doing it so much, I apologized. I said, Tony, I'm sorry, I keep stepping on your words. And he kept answering questions, telling me more and more about Andrea. But somehow, as warm as it was, and as invested as he was in continuing to talk about her, I could tell he had a fuse that was shortening. And finally, he clenched his fist together and said, "Don't set my ticker back." I had no idea what he meant, but somebody nearby didn't know either, but they knew his speech was, "Don't set my ticker back." So it took us a while to figure it out, but so Tony had the misfortune of having HD, and the double misfortune of having me in his world that night. So what was happening was this. If left to his own, and I said, "What's your daughter's name?" Tony would have done this. "Tony, what's your daughter's name?" "Andrea." But he had me. So this is what he got. "Tony, what's your daughter's name?" "How many kids you got?" "How old is she?" "Is that high school or college?" "Would I know her if I saw her?" "She visited lately." And all Tony wants to do is get to Andrea. Setting one's ticker back is very, very annoying. If you have HD, you know what I'm talking about. It's annoying. It's like people aren't taking the time to listen. But those people, me among them, we're wired not to wait. But we'll come back to this in a minute. So the issue is, don't set somebody's ticker back because it takes longer. And it's more of a challenge for them to balance all their thoughts. Which brings us to stereotypes and judgments. So in the arc of this, don't set my ticker back, take HD out of it. If that guy at the gas station you encounter with, if you say, could I have a coffee regular? And he doesn't respond. Right in here, where he doesn't say, "Okay, man," you start wondering, did he hear me? All the judgments, you start tucking in there. All the, something's not right with this fellow. All those kind of things that they happen in here. Is that bad that we think that way? No. It's how we survive as adults in this world, is knowing how people are. But so when we start saying, "Geez, I wonder what's going on here, there's something different," you sense it immediately. But HD presents it as it is a feature of this disease that people are going to have delayed responses in conversation. And the accommodation for those who love them is trying not to set the ticker back. You cannot have an aha moment where you say, "I'm never doing that again," because we are wired as people not to wait in conversations, to keep it up like this. It is really, really hard to do. So that's the whole notion of setting the ticker back. These delays in answering, the only thing I know that can make them worse is talking on the telephone. If you talk on the telephone, it just makes it puts a magnifying glass on it. It's harder and harder. What are you guys laughing at, man?
Our phone conversation.
Okay. But it's really difficult because you don't get any visual cues or any other clues of what's going on with that person. It's like doing it blindfolded. It is doing blindfolded. But anyway, back to this. Then there's this notion on the challenges in thinking, and I think this is the last one, of how we all are wired as people when it comes to memory, by the way. So this is a memory thing. And remember, Huntington's disease is not a memory primary kind of condition like Alzheimer's disease. Those poor souls lose their entire fund of information. Huntington's disease makes it more difficult to access it and express it, but it is there. So, if you were back in like the 5th or 6th grade, let's say, and you were out sick from elementary school, you'd wait till the end of the school day and ask, call up a chum and say, "Hey, I was out today, man. Did I miss a test?" And your chum might say, "Oh, yeah, we missed so-and-so, had a whatever kind of test." Now, if you're from my neck of the woods, where we have no integrity at all, the next question would be, can I have the answers? But in the rest of the country, people have more integrity, I think. The next question often is, what kinds of questions were on the test? Right? Because what kind do you want? Multiple choice, right? Why? I'm looking over there. He's smiling. Multiple choice, man. Why do we like multiple choice? Because all we have to do is recognize the answer. It's right there. Even the advanced ones, like the medical school admission thing. I mean, there's still multiple choice, and it's a much more sophisticated kind of teasing it out. But in even those extreme cases, it's somewhat the same principle. So there's recall and there's recognition. If we had time, and I would recommend you do this if we were trying to teach people stuff, the way we show the difference on these two, recall and recognition, is to ask people to draw a penny. So they draw a penny, they'll say, front or back, it doesn't matter, just draw a penny as best you can. You've seen it bazillions of times. And then they draw it. And they say, okay, give them 30 seconds. And then you show, if I had it on the screen, a picture of a penny. And if any of you have seen me do this, I just sit here and wait, in like 5 seconds, a rumble goes through the room of people smiling and laughing. It's like, oh man, I missed the date. Oh God. Yeah, and it's an upbeat thing. Recognition feels better than recall. Recall is drawing the penny. I am not saying that drawing that penny is an aversive, uncomfortable event. I am not. But I am saying that recognition has a much better feel to it. That's why we all prefer, essentially, multiple choice questions and loathe essay questions, right? Essay questions. Who invented essay questions? May they burn in hell. Really? You gotta get the content of the answer. You gotta organize the sentences. Then you gotta go to your highest central nervous system functions and build in the BS factor to convince the teacher you know more than you actually do. No wonder we hate essay questions. So, back to the disguise. Where in life do we see, in our day-to-day function, where do we encounter essay questions? Answer. What do you want to do today? Right? That simple. The guy who I haven't seen in 30 years, oh man, I haven't seen you in 30 years. What have you been doing? Oh my God, right? It doesn't take much. What do you want for supper? All those kind of things are open-ended questions. They are really tough. So when you encounter people like the physical features, Charlie, how you doing, man? Good. What's up? And then the judgments start. Is Charlie with the program? All those kind of things. By the way, it just occurs to me, I forgot something in the modulated force thing. Finding the right amount of force in your movement, it also affects speech. So if I say to you, how you doing? If you don't have enough force in your diaphragm, here's what you get. How you doing? Good. Right? Or if you use too much force, and I'm giving you a shout alert here, because I'm going to shout. If you say, hey, how you doing? Great! Great! It's like, okay. Hey, actually, I got to run. You know what I mean? But the point is, all of these kind of things, the setting the ticker back, the slower processing, the lack of back and forth, set out a whole other series of messages to you. Not because you're cynical and negative, because everywhere else in your life, those assumptions and presumptions work for you. except in HD, the way all these things are configured. If you ever feel overwhelmed by this, whether you're walking your own road or you love somebody who's walking their own road, and I'm telling you, my family isn't affected, it ain't you. Pause for effect, because it is not you. It is the way the damn disease is designed. If you feel overwhelmed, it's the way it's designed. So, as we said, there's another one of Woody's disguise, and you'll note the cigarette in his mouth, I might add. But Woody was still upbeat, writing, as advanced as he is in that picture. So we would see him and could make some reasonable assumptions, right? About what he can and can't do, what he might be feeling, his mood, and all that. But we would probably be wrong. I'm betting Marjorie Guthrie on the right, there's Arlo on the left, but Marjorie got it. So when we see all of these permutations and configurations of all this other stuff that can disguise people, we often make believe falsely, and I'm making this up. And you can make up your own false beliefs. But for example, he doesn't understand what I'm saying. He doesn't even pay attention to me. He's not answering me, man. He only cares about himself. He didn't want to talk to me, man. All of those kind of things. And you can make other assumptions, but that's what we end up often, not always. We often make these presumptions about how people, what they're feeling and thinking. And those things are what we believe are false. In psychiatry, a false belief is a delusion. So there's this notion of Huntington's delusions. Not on the poor souls walking their road, man, but on us who come to mistaken conclusions about what they may or may not be thinking. So here is how we get fooled. Doesn't happen once. Let's say I'm in a nursing home. This is a true story. And it's the night to go to Walmart, go shopping. I've got the bus, the key. I get out into the lobby, and there's this guy who I know wants to buy, actually it was Barbasol shaving cream. He told me all week, I got to go, man, next week, man, I got to buy my Barbasol. And I come upon him, and I say, hey, you want to go shopping with me today? And boom, no immediate response. And I say, well, do you want to? Come on, it's beautiful out there. Still nothing. No, because it was me back then. Never mind, okay, it's fine. And I leave. But again, with the ticker, no response does not necessarily, no timely response does not necessarily mean, no, I don't want to. Perhaps 7, 8, he would have said yes. If that scenario happened one time, just once, it's reasonable for me to say, oh, he doesn't want to go shopping tonight. If that happens 2 times, maybe in 2 consecutive weeks or 2 consecutive days, I start getting the notion he's not really interested in shopping. If it happens several times, I come to the conclusion, reasonably, based on everything else except my HD experience, I come to the conclusion he never wants to do anything. And that is a false belief. So that's what we call Huntington's delusion. The most common delusion regarding folks who have walked their own HD roads is this one. Well known to many of you. He has difficulty with balance, and he has some dysarthric speech for it, and he doesn't answer questions quickly. Good evening, Mr. Pollard. Where are you headed tonight? And I can't modulate the force in my speech. Where are you headed tonight, Mr. Pollard? Home. It is reasonable for that police officer to conclude that I am drunk, right? That's why it's important for all this law enforcement stuff that people do, education. But it's a delusion. He's not drunk. It's the way HD's features conspire to present him to that police officer. This is an old poster from many years old from the Huntington side of Canada. He's not drunk, he has Huntington's. And you can see the elements that they're showing off to make that communication. So more Huntington's delusions, and again, I just made up this slide. You can make up your own. He's not interested, he's bored, he's lazy, he doesn't like me, he's impatient, he doesn't understand that I just can't take time to do, him. He doesn't understand there are other things I gotta do. I don't think he remembers. Jesus, he used to be such a happy guy. All of those kind of things. So what can we do about this problem? One is to see through the disguise and basically know lots of these elements that contribute to it so you can point it out to people. Use all the accommodations. The accommodations are the same stuff that you see in all the brochures that are out on these tables. Go slow, one thing at a time. Don't set the ticker back. All that stuff is profoundly simple, and it does make a difference. Here's the issue. For all the horrible things about HD, let me put one more on your list of horrible things, and it is this. Some of the only things that we can do to accommodate the cognitive features of HD are profoundly simple, like waiting. The horror is, in the culture we're living in, nobody could ask more of you than to wait for anything in the culture, the world that we're living in. Slow down. What? Are you kidding me, man? Right? Nobody has time for anything. And I'm saying, wait. But I say it not to insult your intelligence. I know everybody figures out wait. But I know how difficult it is to keep working at it and to actually wait. The irony is, the horrible thing is the irony, profound irony of how simple the only accommodations that we can do, the only accommodations that we do are so simple, but so impossible to do in the culture we live in. It's horrible. Can you imagine somebody like me saying, oh, just slow down? What planet are you from? It's that difficult. So use all those simple accommodations. They do matter, but they're really difficult to do. Admit mistakes quickly. This one is from Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. You know, the book that Wile E. Coyote was reading, Always Trying to Catch the Roadrunner. But one of them is admit mistakes quickly. And by that I mean, if you are fooled by the disguise and say, oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were angry. I thought you had a short fuse. Sorry, okay, then maybe you want to wait. Don't presume it. If you mess up and misperceive how somebody feels, just tell them that right away and let them give it another shot. Another one that comes from mental health is let people confirm how they feel, how they might feel. Gee, you look angry. Are you angry? Gee, you look really good today. Are you happy? Yeah, those kind of things. These are nothing new. It's just a bunch of simple things. And when in doubt, wait. Always wait. Wait for what? Wait till you know what you're going to do next. Wait till you figure it out. And try again to go nag-free. At least today, if somebody is next to you is slouching into you, I told you, don't say, sit up for God's sakes. Or try not to set the ticker back. It's hard. We are all carers. If you have HD, you're taking care of yourself, man. Don't forget that. But we're all carers. This stuff is really serious because it can affect somebody's experience decades long of living with HD. But again, repeating myself, some of these things are wicked, wicked difficult to do. It is hard work. That's why every time you try not to set the ticker back, or you really slow down when the world is telling you to hurry the hell up, that is an act of love. It's that hard to do. And you're not bad guys because we come wired to do it that way. It's hard to see through these things every moment, every day. You can only do what you can do. There's Kathy, were you here? Kathy Gibson here? No. Oh, there you are. Hi. Stand up. Just stand up. Kathy is an artist from Maryland, and she has her paintings downstairs. If you haven't seen them yet, please spend a couple of minutes with her. And they're really wonderful paintings. The topics of them are really unique to the experience of Huntington's disease, like one about anticipating positive things from a med change, okay? Like really things that you're familiar with. But among them is, and Kathy's a family caregiver, took care of her sister, right? A series of paintings, but this one here I'm going to show you is called It's Not Her, It's Her Disease. But I think, to me, as soon as I saw it, it's like, oh, she's talking about the disguise. And this is it. There's her sister's face in the back. But you got to look, and all that other stuff is in the way of that simple thing. So check out Kathy's work. Just check it out. You believe me when you do. Unrelated, kinda, but it's important to know that for all of the things, all of those features that can mislead people and create the disguise, there's a whole other body of emerging knowledge where people with HD have difficulty recognizing emotions in other people, particularly anger. So it's not just all what we're seeing, it's a perceptual thing that not everybody, but they may be challenged too, and seeing us when we might be mad, kind of thing. And closing, we have nutshells. What the hell are the nutshells doing here? You all have your nutshell descriptions of Huntington's disease. You all have described Huntington's disease to the people in your lives thousands and thousands of times, right? If we took collectively, this group in this room, and figured it out, it would be bazillions, Carl Sagan, bazillions and bazillions of times. It is the biggest opportunity to teach people about HD, I think, that we overlook. So people have their 15-second version. Oh, my wife has Huntington's disease, she got it from her dad, blah, blah, blah. 15 seconds. Then you might have another, and it's almost rote. You've rehearsed it thousands of times. And then there's another one that maybe is a little bit longer, more detail, 30 seconds, let's say. And then as the old joke goes, there's a third version, which is, really? If you got the time, sit down, I'll tell you the story version. But I'm more interested in the quick ones and what goes in those descriptions. In other words, if you're with the guy that you're often with, your spouse who's affected at the gas station, is it really relevant for the guy behind the counter to know that it's an inherited genetic disease? Or might it be better to say, my wife just needs a little more time to answer questions? That kind of stuff that's way more relevant. Or his balance might be off a little. Or maybe a whole bunch of these things. He might look drunk, but trust me, he ain't drinking. Stuff like that. What goes in those things needs to be concise, and in those few words, I would ask you, don't go into your remote 15-second description. Think about what you want to tell the audience, maybe of one, that he's going to remember and is relevant to him. That said, the goal, once again, is to go from this and realize that whether you have Huntington's disease, neurologic disease of any kind, that if we see through it and understand what's going on in great detail, that is not necessary. Because if you have HD, you're still covered by the rest that covers all of humanity in emotions. That's how we have to continue to see it, but it's challenging. This is a poster from the Irish Huntington's Association, and it simply says there's no cure for Huntington's disease, but you can treat it with understanding. Sometimes understanding is as simple as this notion of the disguise, or as simple as trying not to set the ticker back. Sometimes the simple stuff is the most powerful. If you want a copy of these PowerPoints, I have a sign-up sheet. I'll be glad to send them to you. If you have a support group, or education day or whatever, and you'd like a speaker, I work for the CHDI Foundation. I'm available. See me, and we can have me. I know many of you have invited me, and I've been to many of your groups before. But I just want to get that ad out. No cost to you. It's free. Tell me where you want me, and I will show up there anywhere in the U.S. Courtesy of CHDI. What else? There they are. Thank them. Now, if you ever see me speak before, you know that I always close with the same poem. And it was, not a good time to lose my voice. It was written by a guy from South Africa named Leon Jaffe, who was carer, as they say, or caregiver, as we say, to his wife Pitta, who had HD. And he wrote this poem for Pitta. You surprise me every day, your fighting spirit, your vision, and its ability to draw me forward with you. Your loveliness, even as you plunge through the hardcore of the future. You achieve what others dare not even dream about. You know no barriers to the universe. You are my dreamer, my leader. With you, I am greater than myself. With you, my perpetual fear, carried like a rock, is turned to water to drain away through the tunnel of your laughter and courage. This day we face together another challenge. I hear too distant to do more than love you. I will myself to weakness, that my strength may add to yours. I will myself to passivity, that your actions may shame and humble all like me. Know then how much I admire you, and much more than that, love you. I don't want to leave you on that note. I want to leave you on a lighter note. George Huntington, for whom the disease is named, right? If we could bring him back today, what might he say? He might say, it really sucks, don't name this after me. So, as you leave, on the seat here and the door back there, you're going to get a reminder, a wristband. Now, I don't expect you to wear a wristband with Huntington's disguise on it, but I do know that some of the swag ends up in your junk drawers. So I would like that band to end up in your junk drawer, and when you open it and see the damn thing, you remember what I told you. It's really hard to do. If you're overwhelmed, it's not you. And the irony of how difficult the simple stuff is in the world we do. And that ultimately, it's all an act of love. That's what I want you to remember. You're also going to take a deck of cards, and the cards have one with that image and then a summary of the stuff we covered here. Then you have a Cure Huntington's Diddled with Harley logo that on the back has stages of Huntington's that are from the point of view of people with HD. And then all this is in a book that I self-published, and there's ordering information if you're interested. And then my contact information is on this Diddled with Ramones logo. So they're on that table, and they take one as you leave with one of the wristbands. And in closing, if you ever seen me before, you know I am the provider across the United States of Huntington Sucks bumper stickers. So now that we are in the President Trump era, we have a new Huntington Sucks bumper sticker, and it is this: Huntington Sucks Bigly. So, the requisite orange, obviously, but those are in the band of things. So, anyway, thank you, folks. That's it. I'm grateful for you being here.